My ex accused my sister of being a hypocrite at her wedding for being a stepmom to her husband's kids, but not to mine. I don't even know where to begin, or if I'm even in the right place for this, but I feel like my head is going to explode and I need an outside perspective before I completely lose it. What happened at my sister's wedding feels like a fever dream, and I'm terrified I might have been the asshole. It all started so perfectly. My sister Lola got married last weekend. The venue was this gorgeous salon right on the beach in Mar del Plata, the kind of place you see in magazines. The sun was setting over the Atlantic. The whole place was draped in thousands of tiny fairy lights, and you could hear the waves crashing softly in the background during the vows. It was magical. Lola deserved it. She's the best person I know, and watching her stand there, looking radiant and so happy, I felt my chest ache with love for her. Her new husband is a wonderful man, a widower with 2 incredible kids, a boy and a girl. And from the moment Lola met them, it was never like she was trying to be a stepmom. She just was. There was no awkwardness, no forced affection. During the reception, I watched her crouch down in her stunning white dress to wipe a smudge of chocolate off her new stepson's cheek, and they just giggled together like they'd been sharing secrets their whole lives. It was that natural. She wasn't replacing their mother. She was just adding more love to their world, and they soaked it up. For my son, Mateo, she's always been more than an aunt. Tia Lola is basically a synonym for backup mom. She's his rock, his confidant, his biggest cheerleader. She's the one who taught him how to ride his bike when I was too scared he'd fall. She's the one who sits through his terrible magic shows with a look of genuine awe on her face. She has been a constant, unwavering presence in his life, and in mine. The only ghost at this perfect feast was, as always, my ex. Mateo's father, Ramiro. His name is a heavy thing in our house, a word that usually comes before a sigh or a disappointed shrug. His presence in our lives is defined almost entirely by its absence. He is a master of the last-minute cancellation, the forgotten promise, the birthday card that never arrives. He's a black hole of responsibility. So of course he wasn't on the guest list. Our family, the real functioning one, was all there. And for a few beautiful hours, it felt like that was all that mattered. The air was warm, filled with laughter and the clinking of champagne glasses. Everything was exactly as it should be. I should have known it was too good to last. I guess I should explain why Ramiro wasn't invited in the first place, because this isn't some new drama. This is a wound we've been living with for years. His absence is a scar on my son's childhood, carved out by 1,000 tiny cuts of disappointment. I can't even tell you how many birthdays Mateo spent sitting on the front step, eyes glued to the street, waiting for a car that was never going to turn the corner. The promises were always so grand. "Next weekend, champ, we're going to the big football match," he'd say over the phone, and Mateo's face would light up like the whole world had just been handed to him. And then Saturday would come, and my phone would buzz with the inevitable text. "Hey, so sorry, work is crazy, can't make it, rain check." Every single time. After a while, Mateo stopped asking. He just learned to expect the silence. The worst part is watching that hope fade from your kid's eyes, seeing it replaced by a quiet, adult-like resignation that no 8-year-old should ever have to learn. And it's not just emotional. It's a battle I've been fighting on paper for years. I have a folder on my computer that I call the Ramiro file, and it's full of legal documents and spreadsheets. The child support ledger is basically a history written in zeros. Month after month, the column where his contribution should be is just a stark, empty space. I've sat in sterile courtrooms, shuffling my feet on the linoleum floors, waiting for him to show up to hearings he always forgets about. The judge knows us by name. It's humiliating. It's not about the money, not really. We get by. It's about the sheer, insulting indifference of it. It's the proof in black and white that his own son's welfare isn't even worth the effort of a bank transfer. He wants the title of dad for social media clout, but he refuses to do any of the actual work that comes with it. For every empty promise from Ramiro, there was Lola. She was the constant in our equation. When Mateo had his first big school play, Ramiro swore he'd be in the front row. He never showed. But Lola was there, holding a ridiculous bouquet of flowers and filming the whole thing on her phone, whispering, "He's a star," to me every time Mateo mumbled a line. The time Mateo fell and split his chin open, I called Ramiro in a panic. Voicemail. My next call was to Lola, who left her work meeting without a second thought and beat me to the emergency room. I walked in to find her already there, holding Mateo's hand and distracting him with a story about a clumsy penguin while the doctor prepped the stitches. She's the one who shows up. Always. She never had to, but she did. She became the de facto co-parent, the other adult Mateo could count on, not because she was trying to replace anyone, but because there was a void, and her love was big enough to fill it. She did the job he abandoned. So we were in the middle of the toasts. The champagne was flowing, the fairy lights were twinkling, and Lola's new father-in-law had just given the sweetest speech about how she was the daughter he'd always wanted. People were dabbing their eyes with napkins. I was sitting there, beaming, my hand resting on Mateo's shoulder, feeling this overwhelming sense of peace. For once, everything was right in the world. The best man got up, told a couple of funny, embarrassing stories about the groom from their college days, and raised his glass. The whole room was warm and buzzing with love. And then I saw him. He wasn't at a table. He was just there. Standing by the back entrance, half hidden in the shadows near the bar. Ramiro. He was wearing a suit that was too tight in the shoulders, and he had this look on his face. A smug, self-satisfied smirk that I knew all too well. It was the look he got right before he was about to blow something up, just for the fun of watching it burn. My blood went cold. My heart started hammering against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the soft music. How did he even get in? Before I could even process it, before I could stand up or signal security, he was moving. He walked straight to the small stage where the DJ was set up, a man on a mission. The best man was just handing the microphone back, and Ramiro intercepted it. He just took it, right out of his hand. The music, a soft instrumental track, sputtered and died. The laughter in the room faded into confused murmurs. 100 heads turned towards the stage. "Sorry to interrupt," Ramiro said into the mic, his voice booming through the speakers, slick and falsely charming. I wasn't on the official list, but I couldn't let this moment pass without saying a few words about family. My breath caught in my throat. I could feel Lola stiffen beside me. She grabbed her new husband's hand, her knuckles white. "It's just so beautiful," Ramiro continued, gesturing around the room with a sweeping, theatrical motion. "To see Lola here, starting her new family, playing house. It's truly inspiring how much love she has to give, to other people's kids." A wave of nausea rolled over me. The air crackled with tension. You could hear a pin drop. "You see," he went on, his voice dripping with fake sincerity, "I know what a wonderful mother she could be. I begged her for years to be a part of our family, to help me co-parent my son, her own nephew, Mateo." He pointed right at our table. Every eye in the room followed his finger and landed on us. I felt like I had been stripped naked. But it's funny, isn't it? When it came to her actual blood, her own family, she was never available, always too busy. It seems being a stepmom is so much easier when it comes with a wedding and a fancy party. Some families are just more convenient than others, I guess. He paused, letting the poison sink in. He looked directly at Lola, whose face had crumpled in disbelief and hurt. "So I just wanted to stand up here and say congratulations, Lola. You finally got the perfect ready-made family you always wanted. I just hope, for these kids' sake, that this one doesn't become inconvenient for you too." He put the microphone down on the table with a loud thud that echoed in the dead silence. And then he just stood there, letting everyone stare. He had twisted our entire reality into a weapon and used it to stab my sister on the happiest day of her life. He painted himself as the devoted father she had shunned, and her as the heartless hypocrite who abandoned her own nephew. The lie was so monstrous, so complete, that for a second, the whole world just went silent. For a second, nobody moved. The silence in the room was so absolute it felt like a physical weight pressing down on me, sucking all the air out. It was broken by a tiny, trembling voice next to me. "Mama?" I looked down. Mateo was clutching my hand, his knuckles white. His big brown eyes, usually so full of light and mischief, were wide with confusion, and swimming with tears he was trying so hard not to shed. He looked from me to his tia Lola, who was frozen in her seat, her face a mask of pale shock. "¿Por qué papá dijo eso?" he whispered, his voice so small it was barely a breath. "Why did Dad say that? Does tia Lola not love me anymore?" And that was it. That was the sound of my heart breaking. The humiliation, the shock, it all melted away, replaced by a wave of pure, white-hot rage that was so intense it made my ears ring. All I could see was my son's face, his perfect, innocent world shattered by a lie deliberately crafted to hurt him the most. How dare he? How dare he use our son as a weapon to wound my sister? My head snapped up, my eyes scanning the crowd of stunned faces until I found him. He was back near the exit, leaning against the bar as if he were just watching some casual entertainment. He saw me looking. He had to have seen the fury on my face, the tears welling up in my son's eyes. And he smiled. It wasn't a big smile, just a small, satisfied tilt of his lips. He raised his glass to me in a mock toast, and then, slowly, deliberately, he winked. That wink. I will never forget it. It was a tiny, insignificant gesture that landed like a physical blow. It sliced through the noise in my head and made everything terrifyingly clear. This wasn't the rambling of a hurt father. This wasn't a misguided plea for inclusion. This was a game, a calculated, cruel performance designed for an audience, and that smug, arrogant wink was his victory lap. He had just detonated a bomb in the middle of my sister's wedding, wounded the 3 people I love most in this world, and he was enjoying it. He thought he had won. He thought he could just rewrite our history with a lie, assassinate my sister's character, and walk away with the last word. In that split second, something inside me shifted. The hurt solidified into something cold and hard and heavy in my gut. Resolve. I wasn't just going to sit there and let him burn our world down for sport. My hand, the one Mateo wasn't clutching, slipped into my purse and closed around my phone. My thumb found the home button out of pure muscle memory. For years, I've had to live by one simple rule when dealing with Ramiro. Always, always come with receipts. It's a survival tactic. My phone was an arsenal, loaded with years of his lies and failures, screenshots of his pathetic excuses, the PDF of the child support ledger from my lawyer, a stark grid of dates and zeros, photos, court orders. His wink wasn't an insult. It was a challenge. It was an invitation to a fight he had just started in the most public way imaginable. Fine. I decided to RSVP. I was on my feet before I even realized I had decided to move. My chair scraped loudly against the floor, another jarring sound in the heavy silence. The whole world had narrowed to a single path, from my table to the small stage where the DJ was now fumbling with his playlist, trying to pretend like the whole room hadn't just been held hostage. My phone felt heavy and hot in my hand, a block of righteous fury. I could feel 100 pairs of eyes on me, but I didn't see any of them. All I saw was the microphone, sitting there like an abandoned weapon. I'd taken maybe 3 steps when a hand clamped down on my arm, stopping me cold. It was Lola. She had moved so fast, a blur of white lace and panic. Her face was just inches from mine, and the radiant bride from an hour ago was gone. Her eyes were wide, pleading, swimming in unshed tears that had smudged her perfect mascara. Her bouquet had been abandoned on the table. "Amalia, don't," she whispered, her voice tight and desperate. Her grip on my arm was surprisingly strong. "Please, look at me. Don't do this." "He can't just get away with that, Lola," I hissed back, trying to keep my voice low, but it came out shaking with rage. "Did you hear what he said? Did you see Mateo's face?" "I know," she said, and a tear finally broke free, tracing a path through her makeup. "I know, but this is my wedding. Our wedding. Don't turn it into this, into our drama. Please, Amy. We can deal with him tomorrow, not tonight. Don't let him taint this night any more than he already has." Her words were a bucket of ice water, and for a second, I faltered. She was right. This was her day. The fairy lights, the sea breeze, the first dance she hadn't even had yet. All of it was for her. Was I really about to hijack my own sister's wedding reception to settle a score no matter how justified? I looked at her beautiful dress and her trembling lip, and a wave of guilt washed over me. But then, a quiet voice cut through our tense standoff. "Excuse me, ladies." We both turned. It was the officiant, a kind-faced man named Father Martin who had known Lola's husband's family for years. He looked deeply uncomfortable but also resolute. He gently put a hand on my other arm, drawing me a step away from Lola. "Amalia," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I feel I must tell you something. That man, he nodded discreetly towards the exit where Ramiro had been standing, didn't just crash the microphone. He approached me before the ceremony even started. I stared at him, confused. What are you talking about? He asked to be formally added to the speaking program, the officiant continued, his eyes full of a grim understanding. He wanted to give a toast. He had a whole story prepared about being a concerned co-parent. I told him absolutely not, that he wasn't on the list and this was a private event. He smiled and said he'd find a way. The blood drained from my face. My knees felt weak. This wasn't an impulsive, drunken act of a scorned man. This wasn't a spontaneous moment of bitterness. This was premeditated. He had planned this. He had come here with the specific, calculated intention of humiliating my sister on her wedding day. He had rehearsed his lies. He had strategized the best way to inflict the most pain. The officiant's words changed everything. My brief hesitation, my guilt over ruining Lola's night. It all evaporated, burned away by a fresh, clean inferno of rage. This was no longer about stooping to his level. This was about a calculated attack that demanded a response. Lola wanted peace, but the peace she was asking for was silence. And silence, right now, felt like surrender. It meant letting his version of the story be the final word. It meant letting every one of these guests walk away whispering about the drama, wondering if maybe there was some truth to what that man had said about the heartless sister. It meant letting my son go to sleep tonight believing the poison his father had just poured into his ear. The choice was no longer about causing a scene. It was about whose story would define this night, his carefully constructed fiction, or my documented, undeniable truth. My brain just short-circuited. I stood there, frozen between my pleading sister and the well-meaning officiant, and the whole glittering, beautiful room seemed to warp and bend around me. Premeditated. He planned this. The word echoed in the ringing silence of my mind. My phone felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds in my hand. It was no longer just a tool for revenge, it was a choice. Her peace, or our truth. And I honestly didn't know which one was right. I looked over at Lola. She was still watching me, her eyes wide with a desperate hope that I would just let it go. She just wanted to dance with her husband. She wanted to cut her cake and laugh with her friends and pretend for one single night that her life wasn't tangled up in the ugly, messy knot of my past. And who was I to deny her that? Did I really have the right to turn her one perfect day, the day she'd dreamed of forever, into a public spectacle? My own personal courtroom? The thought made me feel sick. I could already imagine the whispers from her new in-laws, the pitying looks from friends. I'd be the sister with the drama. Our family would be forever marked by this ugly scene. Was my need to be right, my need for justice, worth hijacking her happiness? Was I about to become the very thing I hated? Someone who makes everything about themselves? My gaze drifted past her to my son. Mateo was still sitting at the table, being quietly comforted by Lola's new husband, who had an arm wrapped around his small shoulders. He wasn't crying anymore. He just looked small and lost, like a little boat cut adrift in a storm he couldn't understand. And Ramiro's words were the storm. Does Tia Lola not love me anymore? He had planted that seed of doubt in my son's heart, a toxic weed that could grow and choke out years of love and trust. And if I stayed silent, if I let Lola have her peace, what would that silence say to Mateo? It would say that when someone tells a monstrous lie about the people you love, you just sit there and take it. It would say that his father's version of the story, the one where his beloved aunt is a fake and a hypocrite, was allowed to hang in the air, unanswered. I felt like I was being ripped in two. A part of me screamed to just go back to the table, to grab Lola and Mateo and walk out, leaving Ramiro to bask in his disgusting victory. Let him have the room. We'd have each other. But another, colder part of me knew that wasn't a solution. It was a retreat. It was letting him win. That wink. It wasn't just smugness. It was a declaration that he could control our reality, that he could say whatever he wanted without consequence because he knew we were too decent to fight back in public. He was counting on our shame. He was counting on Lola's desire for a perfect day. He was using our own love for each other against us. And that's when the doubt finally died. This wasn't about my pride. It wasn't even about my anger anymore. It was about the definition of family itself. Ramiro wanted to lecture a room full of people about family, a word he only ever used when he wanted something. He wanted the title of father without the work, and he wanted to accuse Lola of being a fake mom when she had done more real parenting for my son than he had in his entire life. Family isn't just about vocabulary. It's about presence. It's about showing up for the ER visits, the school plays, the sleepless nights. And presence has receipts. It was time to show ours. I took a deep breath, the air tasting like salt and champagne, and looked at my sister. I gave her arm a gentle squeeze and whispered, "Trust me." Then I turned and walked away from her, my heels clicking with a purpose I didn't know I had 5 minutes ago. The room parted for me like I was Moses, and the sea was made of Chardonnay and confusion. I didn't look at anyone. I just walked straight to the DJ, who was staring at me with the wide, panicked eyes of a man who just wants to play Dancing Queen and go home. "I need to connect my phone to the projector," I said, my voice eerily calm. "Just for a minute." He was so stunned he just nodded and handed me a cable. As the screen behind him flickered to life with my phone's lock screen, a smiling picture of Mateo and Lola, I picked up the microphone. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I spoke into the mic as if I were giving a weather report. "Ramiro is right about one thing," I said, and a new wave of shock rippled through the guests. "Family is about more than just a title." Then I swiped open my photo gallery. The first image filled the big screen. It was a screenshot of the child support ledger, a spreadsheet of dates with a column next to it titled, "Amount Paid." The entire column was just a long, repeating string of zeros. 0, Z0, 0, Z0, 0, Z0. I let it hang there for a moment, the stark, undeniable proof of his absence. "This is the co-parenting he begged for," I said quietly. I swiped to the next image. It was a scanned legal document, a note from a family court judge, with a single sentence highlighted in yellow. "The father has shown a consistent and willful pattern of non-compliance and parental negligence." The legal jargon was cold, but it was the truth in a font he couldn't argue with. I saved the most important one for last. I swiped one more time. The final image wasn't a document. It was a photo I took a few years ago in the emergency room, the night Mateo split his chin open. In it, Lola is sitting on one of those horrible plastic chairs, still in her work clothes, holding a sleeping Mateo in her arms. His face is tear-stained and pale, with a clean white bandage on his chin. Lola is looking down at him, her own face etched with an exhaustion and a fierce, protective love that took my breath away then and now. "And this," I said, my voice finally cracking just a little, "is what a convenient family actually looks like." I looked across the room and found Ramiro's eyes. The smirk was gone, replaced by a mask of pure, murderous rage. I held his gaze and delivered the final line. "Hypocrisy is demanding a title you never earned." I put the microphone down. The silence that followed was different this time. It wasn't shocked or uncomfortable. It was heavy, thoughtful. Then from the back someone started clapping. Just one person, then another, and another. Soon half the room was applauding. Not for the drama, but I think for the truth. Security, who had been alerted by the officiant, was already moving. They flanked a sputtering, furious Ramiro and escorted him out without a single word. As the doors swung shut behind him, it was like a dark cloud had finally passed. The whole room took a collective breath, and the tension just dissolved. The first people to reach me were Lola's new stepkids. The little girl just wrapped her arms around my sister's waist and buried her face in her dress. Her brother followed, hugging Lola so tightly. And then Lola looked at me, her face a mess of tears and mascara, but she was smiling. A real, watery, grateful smile. Then Mateo came up to her, his own eyes shining. He looked up at Lola, who crouched down to his level. "Tia Lola," he started, his voice a little wobbly. Can I call you Mama de Corazon? Mom of the heart." That's when Lola finally broke. She let out a sob that was half laugh, half cry, and pulled him into a hug so tight I thought they'd merge into one person. "Oh, my sweet boy," she cried into his hair. Yes. Always. Yes. The rest of the night was beautiful, genuinely. The DJ put on music, people started dancing, and the joy that Ramiro had tried to steal came flooding back, stronger than before. But now, a few days later, the adrenaline has worn off, and I can't stop replaying it in my head. My sister is happy, my son feels secure, and our family feels more solid than ever. But I did it. I stood up at my sister's wedding and aired our dirtiest laundry with a literal PowerPoint presentation. I humiliated my son's father in front of 100 people. I took a terrible situation and poured gasoline on it. It worked, but I can't shake the feeling that I crossed a major line. So, Reddit, I have to ask. Aida for exposing my ex with a full presentation at my sister's wedding after he publicly attacked her?